This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
Unemployment in America. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. The February jobs report went public today. It was not good. The economy shedding 92,000 jobs last month. The overall jobless rate rose to 4.4%. The only good news in the report, wages, they were higher than expected. The cost to fill her up is going up. Gas prices have risen more than 30 cents a gallon since the conflict with Iran began last Saturday. Business analyst Christine Romans.
It's happening quickly and noticeably. If you've filled up, you have noticed here, you're talking about $3.32 a gallon is the national average from overnight. And that's up dramatically. Yesterday, it was $3.19. Last week, below $3. And a month ago, it was only $2.89. So that is a big advance. And the feeling is it's going to continue to go up.
Fox's Cheryl Casoni says this could be a big problem for Republicans in the run-up to the midterms.
So when you've got the American consumer talking about affordability, gasoline prices is one of the biggest things that we hear about.
Nearly a week into Operation Epic Fury, the fight goes on in Iran, the regime refusing to lay down its arms as the U.S. and Israeli aerial assault intensifies. Here's CBS's Tony DeCopel.
As fast as Iran can clean up debris from the last strike, there's a new one. As the U.S. and Israel say, they are carving up the country, dividing targets by region.
NBC's Richard Engel.
The U.S. and Israeli militaries say they're targeting Iran's missiles, security forces, and senior leaders 24/7.
Iran today was accused of violating international law by dropping a cluster bomb on Tel Aviv. It also fired missiles and drones into Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, all countries that host American troops. The president says he wants to play a role in selecting Iran's next leader.
The president says he won't accept a new leader in Iran who will continue Ayatollah Khamenei's policies and force another war in 5 years. In an interview with Axios, President Trump says Khamenei's son, a likely successor, is a lightweight and unacceptable.
Correspondent Jared Hill, the president, telling NBC News that a ground invasion of Iran would be a, quote, waste of time. House Speaker Mike Johnson says it's wrong to refer to Operation Epic Fury as a war. He made those comments after Congress defeated an effort by Democrats to rein in the president's authority to ramp up combat operations.
This is a limited operation. It's an operation that's limited in its scope and duration. It has a very clear mission, and that mission is nearly accomplished by all estimates.
The House Speaker also critical of Democrats for holding up a funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security.
They do not want to fund the agencies whose job it is to keep Americans safe at this time of this heightened threat environment that we're all living in.
All but 4 Democrats voted against the spending bill that would have funded Homeland Security through the end of September. Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin says he's looking forward to serving as America's next DHS secretary. He'll take over for Kristi Noem, who was fired yesterday by the president. Mullin, a former MMA fighter, seemed humbled that he was considered.
It's just, pretty humbling when you start thinking about it. A little kid from West Oklahoma gets to serve in the president's cabinet. That's pretty neat.
Mullin will need Senate confirmation. Noem had been under scrutiny ever since the Minneapolis ICE crackdown that resulted in the deaths of 2 protesters. Laura Reese is a policy analyst for the Heritage Foundation.
When it comes to the Department of Homeland Security, it's about the mission. It's not about who is at the top. If it's becoming about you, then it's time to go. So this was a good time to change up the team.
Noem is the first cabinet secretary to be fired in President Trump's second term. A counterterrorism operation has netted arrests in the United Kingdom. British police taking into custody 4 Iranian suspects. They're accused of spying on locations linked to Jewish groups in the greater London area. President Trump hosting defense contractors at the White House today. They're trying to ramp up weapons production as hostilities with Iran show no sign of letting up.
The President and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth have publicly expressed confidence in the country's munitions stockpile. They say the U.S. has a, quote, virtually unlimited supply of weapons to finish its mission in Iran. But the lack of a definitive deadline and the escalating military campaign in Iran is exactly why some lawmakers have concerns about the country's weapons stockpile.
Fox's Madeline Rivera, Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez dropping his re-election bid. The embattled Republican admitted to having an affair with a staff member who later committed suicide.
He says that he will serve out the rest of his term, but for the sake of his family, he will not be seeking re-election. He was posed to go to a runoff in May.
Henry Ramos reporting 3 former presidents, Clinton, Obama, and Biden, all in attendance today for the funeral of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's being eulogized at a church in Chicago. Jackson died last month at the age of 84. A new Fox News poll shows socialism is gaining ground, with American voters, nearly 40%, think the far-left form of government is a good thing. That's up 6 points from just 6 years ago. Media critic Joe Concha.
You look at the percentage who say socialism is a good thing by party, according to this poll. Democrat, 55% believe that socialism is a good thing. And then you look at Republicans, that's less than 1 in 4.
66% of Democrats under the age of 45 favor socialism over capitalism. Drugstore chain CVS is using artificial intelligence now to help customers with their healthcare needs. It's teamed up with Google to bring together major players in the industry. Pharmacies, healthcare providers, and insurance companies will all be able to communicate on one platform now. CVS owns the largest chain of drugstores in the country. Add another record to the illustrious career of the NBA's all-time leading scorer.
James, turn around. He's got it! Another record in the legendary career of LeBron James.
41-year-old LeBron James last night broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record for the most career field goals, 15,838. Still to come on the Noon Report for a Friday, bringing back coupons, getting ready for the time change, and officer-involved shooting in Buffalo.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. A taste of spring is ahead for our region heading into the weekend. I'll have the numbers and the complete forecast coming up in 10 minutes. See you soon.
All right, Kevin, we'll see you then. Let's check the stories making news where you live next. New York Republican gubernatorial candidate Bruce Blakeman was in Elmira Thursday, where he promised, if elected, to cut in half New York's energy costs. Blakeman also stressed his commitment to fighting crime and creating jobs. Polls show the Nassau County executive trailing Governor Hochul with about 8 months to go till the midterms. New York and Pennsylvania have joined attorneys general from 24 states in suing the White House over the Trump tariffs. New York's top cop, Tish James, argues those tariffs drive up costs for consumers.
Just weeks ago, the Supreme Court rejected the administration's attempt to impose sweeping tariffs without proper authority. And now the president has chosen a different route to accomplish the same unlawful, illegal, and unconstitutional goals.
The Trump administration says tariffs promote fair trade, protect national security, and level the playing field on the world stage. A man is dead following an officer-involved shooting last night in Buffalo. Cops called to Minnesota Avenue just before 11 p.m. to investigate a suspect suffering from a mental health crisis. Once they got there, things escalated. The man held 3 people at knife point. One officer tased him while another fired his weapon. A horrific crash near Rochester, New York, took the life of a 6-month-old child and seriously injured 3 others. It happened at a busy intersection in the town of Gates. Police Chief Robert Long says his thoughts and prayers are with the victim's family.
We all deal with grief in our own ways, right? Some of us, it just sits inside. Some people overly cry, and that you can see that somebody's having trouble. Some people you can't see that. It's that that dark passenger that stays with you.
Chief Long says the driver of a black SUV slammed into the back of a white SUV at a high rate of speed. A former high school English teacher from East Irondequoit, New York, will be in court this month to answer to charges that he took a regents exam for a student and then harassed her to lie about it. 40-year-old David Burchell was arrested and charged with aggravated harassment and endangering the welfare of a child. He is no longer employed by the East Irondequoit School District. Low enrollment has 3 Chautauqua County school districts discussing a potential merger. Officials say Clymer, Sherman, and Panama Central schools each have fewer than 400 students K through 12. 90% of school districts statewide have seen dwindling enrollment. 250,000 students in New York have left public education the past 10 years. Pennsylvania lawmakers are looking at a change which could bring back a familiar sight in the grocery store aisle: paper coupons. Here's Family Life's Brian Query.
A soon-to-be introduced bill in the Pennsylvania House would require grocery stores that offer digital coupons to also provide paper versions in store. Representative Jessica Benham says many shoppers, especially seniors and people without smartphones, can't access app-based discounts. Her proposal would require stores to make paper coupons available or apply digital discounts for customers without requiring an app. Similar measures are being considered in several other states. Supporters say the goal is fairness for all shoppers, while some industry groups argue the added cost could ultimately raise grocery prices. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thank you, Brian. Some Pennsylvania politicians are raising concerns about new technology that can change grocery prices in real time. It's called dynamic pricing, and it changes prices instantly using artificial intelligence. A new bill in the Pennsylvania Senate would limit that practice on essential goods. Supporters say the measure protects shoppers from sudden price spikes at the checkout aisle. Daylight saving time arrives this weekend, and the time change can increase the risk for automobile accidents. Here's Family Life's Dee Haley.
The New York State Partnership Against Drowsy Driving is warning that daylight savings time can put drivers at risk of drowsy driving. Ahead of Sunday morning's time change, the partnership is raising awareness about the dangers of driving while tired. The partnership is also focusing on educating young drivers and providing training for commercial vehicle drivers, 2 groups considered to be at higher risk of driving while drowsy or fatigued. Today through Monday, the New York State Department of Transportation is partnering with the New York State Thruway Authority to display Stay Awake, Stay Alive messages on signs along state roadways. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
All right, Dee, thank you very much. Let's pause, switch gears, talk sports. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, it's not football season, but we've got to start with some big NFL news. The Buffalo Bills went out and got their man, a game-changing wide receiver in DJ Moore from Chicago. The Bears, in exchange, get the Bills' second-round pick from next season. Action on the ice saw the Sabres make use of shorthanded goals against the Penguins. Both Ryan McLeod and Alex Tuck delivered, and Buffalo skated past the Pens in Pittsburgh 5-1. For McLeod, it is his 5th shorthanded goal of the season. That's a league best. It was Buffalo's 5th straight victory. The Rangers rolled past the Maple Leafs at Madison Square Garden 6-2. Alexis Lafreniere had a goal and 2 assists to lead New York. The Islanders out west to take on Los Angeles, and the Kings defeated New York 5-3. Artemi Panarin scored his first goal in a Kings uniform in the victory. The Flyers hosted Utah and could not get anything going against Vitek Vanacek. He stopped all 16 shots he faced and shut out Philadelphia 3-0. Also skating to wins, the Blue Jackets, Predators, Jets, and Senators. In the NBA, the Heat made easy work of the Nets again in a rematch, this time in Miami. 126-110 the final. Brooklyn's losing streak now sits at 10 games. The Magic won by a point over the Mavs, 115-114. The Warriors won in overtime by 2 over the Rockets. That is a look at sports.
All right, Randy, thank you very much. And still to come on the Noon Report, race for governor. Supreme Court upholds parental rights. And what's the end game in Iran? We're talking about it on Capital Connection right after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. A few weeks ago, a Chinese court sentenced businessman and politician Jimmy Lai to 20 years in jail. Because he is 78 years old, that amounts to a life sentence. Of course, jailing dissidents is a standard operating procedure for communist dictatorships, but Lai is no standard dissident. A billionaire with connections around the world, he could have escaped to Paris a long time ago, or maybe the U.S., or maybe the Caribbean. But instead, he chose to stay in his adopted home of Hong Kong, even after Beijing took control. As Mark Clifford put it in an appropriately named book about Lai, the troublemaker, quote, instead of fleeing, he doubled down. In his last 5 months of freedom, he live-streamed weekly video programs featuring politicians, diplomats, journalists, and religious figures. He preferred to go to jail for freedom and democracy rather than abandon the city that he says, quote, gave me everything. Lai was born in the late 1940s, between the end of the Second World War and the Chinese Revolution. As a child, his mother was persecuted by communist authorities, and he witnessed the beginnings of the state-sponsored famine that occurred between 1958 and 1962 and claimed tens of millions of lives. In search of a better life, he snuck into the British territory of Hong Kong with only a few dollars in his pocket. After sleeping on the floor of the textile factory where he worked, he eventually moved up to management and finally to ownership. He was both self-made and self-taught and continued to expand his business interest, even to the point of supplying department stores across the U.S. And still not satisfied, Lai established a weekly magazine and a daily newspaper. Though both reflected a if it bleeds, it leads tabloid style of journalism, they also covered his growing philosophy about free markets, free elections, and free speech. Especially after his conversion to Christianity, Lai's publications have defended democracy, freedom of religion, human rights. When Britain handed Hong Kong to China in 1997, they made a deal that was known as Two Systems, One Country. The deal was that while China would remain communist, Hong Kong would retain its unique liberties. Many in the West assumed that Beijing would never risk its golden goose by altering the deal at all. But in 2020, as the world was distracted by COVID, the national security law was enforced in Hong Kong. Elections, freedom of the press, freedom of association, trials by jury, these were just some of the rights that were dropped in the name of protecting citizens. All the while, Jimmy Lai stood for and with the people of Hong Kong. He supported them as they protested, not only with his media empire, but also with his financial backing, and even his own physical presence on the streets. It's difficult to understand why Beijing would demand such complete loyalty, but that's a consistent characteristic of dictatorships. Dissent is not an option. Dissenters are punished. A worldview that embraces that there's truth higher than the leader or the movement is its greatest threat. As Francis Schaeffer wrote, quote, no totalitarian authority nor authoritarian state can tolerate those who have an absolute by which to judge that state and its actions, end quote. Well, given the geopolitical situation there and Beijing's commitment to make an example of him, Lai's unlikely to ever again see the freedom for which he has fought so long. We should pray for him in his confinement and ensure that his story is not forgotten to the world. And we should imitate him by insisting ourselves on those things that are eternal and true. After all, every single Christian is called to live out our convictions, even if it cost us as greatly as it has Jimmy Lai. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Dr. Timothy Paget. And to download or share this commentary with others, go to colsoncenter.org/radio.
Thank you, John. Outside next, it's weekend weather with Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast. The call for this afternoon, generally cloudy. There can still be a little touch of drizzle or a sprinkle. Milder, though, than it's been with high temps generally in the 50s. Tonight, some clouds. Could be a shower. Early lows in the 40s. Temperatures rising for some overnight. It'll be a warm day tomorrow and breezy. Clouds, some sun, couple showers. High temps tomorrow, mostly in the 60s. And then we watch for some thunder possibilities late in the day and at night. Cooler on Sunday. Clouds in the morning, sun in the afternoon. High temps, upper 40s and 50s.
All right, thank you, Kev. Don't forget to spring forward this Sunday as well, folks. It is Friday, the 6th of March, and this is the Noon Report on Family Life. is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are this week Stephen Hayford with New York Families and Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Well, gentlemen, if you believe the polls, they will tell you that Bruce Blakeman and Stacey Garrity don't have a chance in the New York and Pennsylvania gubernatorial races this year. Steve, I want to begin with you and this guy, Bruce Blakeman, largely an unknown in New York. He's the county executive from Nassau County, made a name for himself by standing up for women's sports, but he's also pro-choice, and some are wondering if that's going to hurt him. But other than that, a lot of New Yorkers are asking the question, who is Bruce Blakeman? What does he have to do to make this race competitive with Governor Hochul?
Well, Bob, one thing that he's got to do is he's got to find a way to connect with pro-life voters. And one thing that could hurt him is a lack of enthusiasm from Republican voters, conservative voters, many of whom are pro-life. Like any other voters, pro-life voters need to be motivated and given a reason to vote for somebody. Despite his pro-choice position, there are life-affirming policies he could support, like allowing Choose Life license plates or barring non-physicians from performing abortions in New York. So far, he hasn't expressed support for anything like that. He's made no effort to reach out to pro-life voters or to distinguish his positions on human life from Governor Kathy Hochul's, and that's a strategic error.
Yeah. I wanted a quick follow-up. Where's he stand on the assisted suicide law?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Interesting. All right, let's move on to Pennsylvania. State Treasurer Stacey Garrity wanting to make history, becoming the first female governor of the Commonwealth. It's going to be an uphill climb for her to do that. Just the money advantage that the governor has, as well as the name recognition. Do you see this race tightening at all, Michael? Are there any vulnerabilities in Governor Shapiro that Garrity could expose?
I think the race will tighten right now. The polls have Shapiro with a pretty comfortable lead. But these races do historically always tighten. Shapiro does have a money and a name recognition advantage over Garrity, but Garrity has won statewide office, was the top vote getter in this last election cycle. So she has some positives there. I think the vulnerability for Governor Shapiro is, number one, his continual budget delays and spending habits. I think she can make hay out of that as the state treasurer. He's got some sex abuse scandals in his administration that she can point to as well. And then I think a third part of that, in terms of just pointing out, is that he's distracted with his desire to be the president. And will that change voters' minds related to him if they see his ambitions more for America than for Pennsylvania?
Yeah, we'll see. Interesting. I would be remiss not to bring up the war in Iran, guys. Operation Epic Fury. Just the historicity of this moment that we're all living in cannot be overstated. Stephen, how consequential is this for the broader Middle East? A lot of folks are saying it's not World War III yet, but are you concerned at all that this might widen into a larger war than it already is?
Well, Operation Epic Fury is highly consequential for the Middle East, and it could bring about major changes. The question is, what kind of changes will they be? Iran has been ruled over by jihad terrorists since 1979, and that regime has been a state sponsor of terrorism. It's brutally oppressed its own people and been dedicated to the destruction of Israel and of the United States. So Operation Epic Fury, it gives the Iranian people a chance at freedom. It could lead to greater peace in the Middle East, or it could lead to a wider war and to chaos inside and outside Iran. And so at this time, Christians should be in prayer for our president, for the Iranian people, for the underground church in Iran, and for our troops, and for peace and freedom throughout the Middle East.
Yeah. I wonder, Michael, some are saying this is the most significant foreign policy event since the collapse of the Berlin Wall. They're talking about the late Ayatollah Khomeini and Trump being able to accomplish something that no president has in 47 years. Could we really see that kind of regime change, that kind of momentum shift in the Middle East? And do you think that the Iranian people will seize this opportunity?
Well, when you look at the American involvement in the Middle East over these last almost 50 years, because of the actions of Iran and its proxies, this death and what could be regime change in that country could signal a new and different reality in the Middle East, and that extends then to the impact on places like China and Russia and their reliance on Iranian oil. So it is a major game changer depending on how it plays out in the days and weeks and months to come.
All right. Good to get your guys' thoughts on that. We don't usually go into foreign policy, but this will make an exception. I want to talk about a big Supreme Court decision that came down this week. Stephen, in a 6-3 ruling, the High Court has temporarily halted a California law. I could not believe that California was doing this, telling its schools to not tell the parents of children that were receiving gender reassignment counseling and the like. Could a decision like this bear any fruit in a state like New York?
Well, Bob, the answer is yes. In this case, it's not over, but the Supreme Court has ruled that while the case is pending, California schools have to adhere to parents' instructions about their children's names and pronouns, and schools are barred from misleading parents about their children's gender identities. The Thomas More Society represents plaintiffs. They say this decision is the most significant parental rights ruling in a generation.
Wow.
And Bob, unfortunately, New York is doing many of the same things that California has been doing with regard to gender issues in schools. So we certainly hope and pray that it will have a major impact here.
Michael, I know you're paying close attention to this as well. What's the fallout from this? And do you feel like a case like this, depending on what the Ninth Circuit does, do you think that will lead to fewer children falling into transgender indoctrination?
Well, I certainly hope it will, and I hope it impacts the relationship between schools and parents. You know, we at the Pennsylvania Family Institute and our Independence Law Center have gone to bat on behalf of parents in these kinds of situations where things are being hidden from them, these transitions and so forth, or even in one case where a child was removed from the home because the authorities thought that the parents were not going to support the child's desire to transition. So we're hopeful with the Supreme Court ruling that the rightful place of parents to direct the education and well-being of their children will be recognized in law here in Pennsylvania and across the nation.
All right. And then moving on, playing nice with ICE or not. Stephen, I'll start in New York. There are several bills in the state legislature this session that have to do with limits or bans on any kind of cooperation with federal immigration officials. We all saw what happened in Minneapolis earlier this year. I want you to explain to our audience what is happening in Albany and whether or not it's prudent on the part of the legislature, starting with the governor, to go down this road.
Well, Bob, there are a few different proposals kicking around in Albany, and they range from the very far left to the not quite as far left. The New York For All Act is the very far left, and this would categorically ban local police from formally or informally collaborating with ICE in federal immigration enforcement activity. Governor Kathy Hochul sometimes tries to thread the needle and find a slightly less left-wing approach than some of the state legislators. She's proposed the Local Cops Local Crimes Act, which would ban formal agreements between state and local law enforcement and ICE and repeal the existing agreements that exist. This bill would expire, interestingly, on July 1 of 2029 after President Trump has left the White House. She also wants to ban immigration enforcement in sensitive locations. These are not good ideas. To put it simply, coordination and cooperation between local law enforcement and the federal immigration authorities is a good thing, and something that should not be hindered by state government.
Yeah, this is a big story in Pennsylvania as well because of those two possible ICE holding centers in Berks and Schuylkill counties, Michael. Governor Shapiro making no bones about it, how he feels on this. He does not want ICE in any way, shape, or form in the Commonwealth. Does he have the legal authority to prevent the federal government from moving in and opening up these holding facilities in the Commonwealth?
My sense is that he doesn't have the direct authority to prevent that. I think he's looking at, and what we've witnessed in his comments is he's looking at things like trying to get local governments to do things or dealing with EPA rulings or whatever to say that water use is going to be problematic or things kind of niggling at the regulations to try to prevent it. But I don't think he can directly stop it. He's doing the same kind of threading the needle, trying to seem like he's kowtowing to the radicals in the party on some hand, and then also suggesting that he believes in the rule of law. I don't know that he can have it both ways.
All right, you can't have your cake and eat it too in this case, for sure. Hey, we've been a lot of places, guys. If folks have questions about any of these topics or they simply want to learn more about New York families and the great work you do in New York every single day, Stephen, where can folks find you online?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in Pennsylvania as well. The Pennsylvania Family Institute. Where can folks find you, Michael?
PAFamily.org.
All All right, thank you very much, guys. Capital Connection comes your way every Friday during the noon report or online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and FamilyLife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. The serpentine front draped over Pennsylvania that's brought our region rain, even some freezing rain last night in areas close to Lake Ontario, is still in place this day, and this is going to keep our region still pretty cloudy. But it will dissipate, allow warmer air to move in to start the weekend. Temperatures heading to lofty levels for many, but there'll be some showers, even a rumble of thunder. Then it clears out, cools down a bit on Sunday. The call for this afternoon, generally cloudy. There can still be a little touch of drizzle or a sprinkle. Milder, though, than it's been with high temps generally in the 50s. Tonight, some clouds, could be a shower. Early lows in the 40s, temperatures rising for some overnight. It'll be a warm day tomorrow and breezy. Clouds, some sun, couple showers. High temps tomorrow, mostly in the 60s. And then we watch for some thunder possibilities late in the day and at night. Cooler on Sunday, clouds in the morning, sun in the afternoon. High temps, upper 40s and 50s.
All right, great work at the Weather Center. Thank you very much, Kevin. And finally at noon, the Brady Bunch House in Los Angeles is now an official historic cultural monument.
Here's the story.
L.A. City Council this week voted to give the Brady Bunch House landmark protection. That home, built in 1959, was used for exterior shots on the popular TV sitcom, which ran from 1969 to 1974. It's currently owned by a Texas philanthropist, television producer, and big fan of the show. That woman bought it for $3.2 million back in 2023. And that's our world, the world we live in. Friday, the 6th of March. Have a wonderful weekend. And again, don't forget to spring forward this Sunday. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.